Morning, Emily.
Morning, Grace. Good morning, everybody out in Facebook land. Nice to see you. Can't really see you, but I know that you're there. So, it's Emily Miller from beadshop.com in California. We're in Redwood City, California. Sunny Redwood City, California.
Really
we're having a heat wave here, another one. It's going to be 80-something today, and we're all inside with the air conditioning on. So that's good. Grace, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm really good. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm excellent.
Good.
I'm really looking forward to this. We're missing our Kate Richburg. Anybody heard from Kate Richburg lately? Is the eagle landed? Is she on the ground? She should be by now in Tacoma. And I hope you're watching Kate Richburg. Good morning to you, by the way.
And quick happy birthday.
Oh my gosh. We're here. Also, Janice is moderating for us in Alexandria. And behind the camera is our one and only Brandwin. BB. Brandwin her birthday is today, so please can we have lots of happy shout outs for Brandwin. And she's only came in to film today and collect some goodies.
Oh, beautiful. Grace Nolan original.
Yeah, Grace made her an amazing necklace with some help from Tria.
Yeah.
So it's a group effort, so it's really nice. And you're matching earrings, too.
Yes.
Yeah, let's not forget that. Brandon really wears great earrings often, and it's really nice to see. She likes jewelry a lot, and today she's got some stunning ones on, so it's awesome. So welcome, and today's topic is to do some pearl knotting or bead knotting, since we're going to work with multiple different types of beads. You know, this is kind of a technique that's very close to my heart in a lot of ways. It's one of the first techniques I learned, wire wrapping and pearl knotting, and it's something that I've practiced for a long time and I've taught it for a long time, and I fall back on it really often because I feel like I need that spacer in between the beads, and it gives me a lot of pleasure to make a beautiful strand of beads look even more beautiful and more elegant and graceful. So we're going to get into things, and I just want to check in with Brandon. How are we doing?
I'm getting lots of happy birthdays.
Oh.
So I'm great. One request to see the necklace, which
Okay. Well,
yeah.
we'll get there. Don't worry.
At some point. Yeah, we got lots of people out there. Everybody seems we got the regulars.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
It's looking really good.
Sweet.
Great.
So if you want to go see the necklace, this is a great segue. Thank you so much. Go to beadshop.com. At the top of the page, it says Facebook Live. Click there. On the upper left-hand corner of that next page that you get to will be today's project, and we put them there every time. So it moves along, and every week that you come, there'll be a different one there. I do have a little bit of business to take care of before we get going. I have a couple of people to say thank you to for some new photos that came our way. I also wanted to shout out to Lindy. I know you may not be watching until later, but I got your thank you, and this thank you also. I'm going to pull up a couple of pictures, a la Kate Richburg. And actually, I hid them back here, so they might just be easy to pull up, right?
Very nice.
Yeah, I know. So this is the right angle weave project. This is done with 5 rows across instead of 4. You get points, Annie, for bumping it up. So this gives you a center line, which is kind of a nice way to go. You know, that odd number feeling is really beautiful. And I love how it came out. Beautifully matching clasp, perfect size, perfect style, and a matching pair of earrings from also a previous wire working class, right?
And it looks so great together.
I know. I like to have things that go together. I don't necessarily want like a match set, but these I think go together really well.
Really
Good job,
nice.
Annie.
I like the colors she chose too. That champagne with the brown and blue.
Yeah.
With the white. Oh man.
Yeah, and these golds.
Up just a little bit. We're getting
Sure.
a bit of a reflection.
Sure, this way.
Just turn the yeah.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. I love how some of these gold will have a little bit of a blue tint to them sometimes. So I really do like that a whole lot.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. All right, let's see if I've got the next one right behind it, and I hope I do. I do. So, this is Helena from Finland. Sent me a collection here. Let me get rid of that stuff. There we go. No. There we go.
Looks good.
So, brick stitch, and with brick stitch with netting, very nicely done.
Wow.
I know. This looks like it's a size 8 bead, which is great. It works perfectly.
I love the gold, just hints of it, and it just
Yeah.
looks so elegant.
I feel like our viewers are pretty sophisticated sometimes with their
are.
color combos and
Totally.
choices. This is also Helena's stuff. Helena, the spiral rope, and I love the crystal and the rainbow in this. I think she did a really, really nice job.
Totally.
It's a little bright on the screen, but
Okay. I can
just
bring it down a little bit.
just to get some of those details.
Yeah.
It is beautiful.
Yeah. And I'll send these over to Drea so she can. And then the piece de resistance. Look how cute these beaded bear earrings are. Aren't those awesome?
Really nice.
Yeah. Really, really good. I love them. Love them, love them, love them. Lovely colors, bright, sparkly, good combo with the ear wires, all to the good.
That looks great.
Yeah, I know. I'm
Actually,
really
all-
excited.
All the pieces you showed look great.
It's really nice to see some responses out there for Seed Beat School and see people making stuff because, you know, I mean, I know I'm doing it. I hope you guys are doing it. So it's really great. We have some fun Seed Beat School things coming up next month and January, and oh my gosh, everybody's getting really excited. Okay, cool. Well, that takes care of some of our bookkeeping. And I think I can just close all that up. Sideways. Okay. We're on to new business. So I want to make sure that you all remember to check in our projects. We have a couple of different projects that already include knotting. We have an illusion knotting project that will allow you to do spaces of thread between beads. So that would be the tin cup. Also, Odyssey does a similar thing where we use knots to hold the beads in place on that's on the wax linen, is that right? The necklace with all the...
Well, it's a bracelet, but I think Kate made a necklace.
I think
Yeah,
so too, yeah. So pearl knotting or knotting between beads for me has always been something that I use to accent those beads and make them look a little bit more exciting. It also is something that I like to use to improve the flexibility and drapiness of something. You know, Janice talks a lot about having a little air in her pieces, and I fully believe in air, except when I'm knotting. No air in knotting. Because the knot is giving you that air as you need it. It compresses and bends and allows you to have that space and that flexibility.
I see.
Okay. So knotting is kind of one of those things that I do a lot. You can knot between every bead, or you can not knot in between every bead. I'll try not to say knot when I mean N-O-T. I'll avoid saying it as much as possible. Or you can choose to not have a knot there. But it's really hard when you start talking about it. So pearl knotting for me, or knotting between beads, is something that I do often. This is the project that we are going to work on today with a 3-strander on some chain. And the idea for this was I have a couple of necklaces that I put on and wear often when they're necklaces where I don't need any trouble. I just need to put something on and have it look good and be able to walk out the door and know that it works. And it's flexible, it's sturdy. I know that there's no problems. It's not going to get caught on stuff.
Right.
You know, it's got all those things going on. But I also really wanted to take advantage of these great new stones that we have, the beads from Dakota Stones. Dakota Stones make these amazingly beautiful large holes in their beads, and that to me is like, it's the bomb. It's something that you don't get often, and we certainly didn't get, coming from as many years of beading as I've done it, we certainly didn't get it. It used to be that way. We always used to have to struggle with the holes in beads. Even going so far as reaming them out. Which we'll talk about at some point in the future, I promise you. We'll talk about making the holes in beads bigger. And it can be done if you have the patience to do it, which sometimes I do and sometimes I don't.
Kate did a free tip Friday on
Did she?
pearls.
Pearl
reaming pearls.
Yeah. Because you can do it on pretty much anything.
Right.
If you want to, but I don't really want to. So this is my personal necklace that I feel is like one of those
so
everyday
beautiful.
necklaces, and it's a very pretty strand of rutilated quartz, which tends to come in some variations in color, which I really like, and I split it halfway with a strand of chain, And this for me is an over-the-head necklace. I don't have to,
Yeah.
think about it too much. I can wear it on black. I can wear it on white. I could wear it on something with some pattern or design.
Totally.
Still shows up really, really pretty. And it's really helpful to wear it and get lots of compliments on it.
You could get. What I like about this project is that you can layer, and I love layering
Me
so
too.
much, and it looks like.
And this
already
is
with
like
what
an
you're
auto
wearing.
layer.
Yeah.
You don't even have to think about
Yeah.
it. So this one I knotted on some nylon, like Ceylon, and it's a green Ceylon. So one of the things you can do also with the knots is add that little bit of color.
Yeah.
So if I had chosen a golden color, this would be a different flavor of
Yeah.
necklace. And that's fine. You can pick. Of course, beads are, recyclable. If you don't like it or you're not wearing it, cut it up and make something else out of it. But I have a few samples that we'll kind of talk about as we kind of go through this. Today, though, we're going to work with some nylon. And nylon is a really great choice for working with knotting between beads. It's super durable. It's inexpensive. Thread is sort of cheap in comparison to like soft flex or wire. If you make a mistake and you don't like it, cut it up, make something else. It's okay.
Yeah.
How we doing, Gracie? We got any questions going on, or lots of chit chat still?
We got some people are talking about how they like knotting as somebody. Sorry, gotta go back. Shari said she loves knotting, not just pearls, makes the glass look really cool. And also, Carol's really happy since she's got a pearl necklace to work on.
Oh, and I think it's probably one of those common repair jobs when people find out that you make jewelry with beads and they come to you with a little baggie and they go, is there any way that you could possibly refix this for me? If you go to have something knotted professionally, it's expensive. It might cost you a couple of dollars a knot or a couple of dollars an inch to have a necklace restrung. So it's not cheap, and certainly you can do it yourself.
When it comes to pearl knotting specifically, are pearls knotted? This might sound like a really dumb
detailed
question. No, it's a dumb question, but I really am curious. We say pearl knotting. Do we knot pearls so that the luster stays intact? Okay.
Bunch of different good reasons for it.
Okay.
Yeah. So one thing that knots between beads help is they keep the beads from rubbing against one another. So pearls, over time, if they're rubbed consistently in the same
grind
spot,
down.
they'll grind away some of that pretty shiny stuff on the outside. Also, one of the issues with pearls is if your strand happened to break, some horrible misadventure, you really wouldn't want to be chasing down the street in trying to find all of your loose beads. And so only one is loose at that point if it breaks between the knots. And then that's fairly easy to, to understand. I also think that one of the sort of hidden benefits of knotting is that you actually get longer strands out of your beads than you thought you had. So that's kind of nice, to get a little bit more out of it than you thought.
Yeah.
We have a couple of somebody, and maybe you'll be getting into this, but somebody wants to know what your favorite knotting tool that gives you the best results. And Kimberly is also interested in threads, sizes, nylon versus silk. She's ready to soak it all in. So
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So with soft flex wire, you have different colors, gold, bronze. You have different sizes and diameters, and those are fairly easy to understand because they are related exactly to the item. Threads, on the other hand, do not have any kind of general consistent sizing system that goes across brand to brand to brand. So sometimes you're going to have to do a little bit of an experiment to see what you like. Silk thread is the most flexible of threads that you're going to encounter. It's also the most fragile. So unless you're knotting something that's really exquisite, or you're looking for a pale pastel that you maybe aren't finding very easily in nylon, I almost always work with nylon. It's just a little less expensive, it's a little easier to come by, and it's definitely more durable. If you're working with stone of any weight, anything beyond an 8 millimeter and up, I would still be using nylon thread. So it's a kind of a good call at that point. Nylon, you suffer a little loss of flexibility if we compared it head to head with silk, but I think the durability that you gain from it is well worth that.
I see.
And Janice was saying that she thought micro Ceylon would be a better match for knotting.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, you can knot with whatever material you like. I've even knotted with leather, so we can actually knot between the beads with a leather cord, just like you would use in any laddering project. And made a little sliding knot so that I can slip this over my head. More knots, right? if you're worried about what's the smallest size or the biggest size you can knot with, you may have to buy a couple of sizes to play around with. One of the things that I tend to like to do, which you'll notice a difference in if you go look at the tin cup necklace, I tend to like to knot with double threads. It's a little faster, and it allows me to use a little thinner thread and get a little bit bigger knot. So it's kind of it's a little bit of a give and take that you might have to do. A little bit of experimenting. Glass beads and our stone beads are going to have bigger holes. Pearls and natural materials typically are going to have smaller holes.
We got a couple of other
Yeah,
questions. We got lots
excellent.
of questions today. If you're not going to knot, should you use a spacer?
It sort of depends. If you have perfectly round beads and you're stringing a whole strand of perfectly round beads, I think you'll find that little bit of a grinding thing happening between them, and it won't have as much flexibility. It'll sort of bind on itself. So in that case, I would definitely put a spacer in.
Well, then can I ask a question?
Sure.
With this, did you knot them and you just used like a kind of shadow metal bead to cover it?
Well, that so people can see.
Yeah. So Gracie's pulled up another one. I brought lots of samples with me to talk about. There's actually a yellow knot in between here. You see him?
Yeah.
I'm going to zoom in on that.
Okay. I'm going to hold it steady
Okay.
and let you do that.
So these ones don't have knots underneath them?
Correct.
I see.
So one of the things that I really liked about these beads was that they had these sort of pointy shapes. I did a little test and knotted a few inches of it, and I found that they kind of bound up on themselves. So it was really worthwhile knotting. That gave it a little space, but I wanted a little more length, so I added those little shadows just in there for the heck of it. Now, I didn't knot next to those shadows because the thread I was using to fit through the beads wouldn't create a large enough knot to stay on the outside of that bead, that metal bead.
That hole is too large, it would just eat it up.
Yeah, so it's knotted in groups. So, for instance, this little group right here, a group of 3 beads knotted together, you could easily do that with any amount of groupings of beads. It would be all right, right?
Yeah.
And that is considered the way it works, right?
Cool.
Yeah.
The other
Kind
question
of fun
I had,
little weird spiky beads.
I love them.
the other question I had was just about archival, how archival some of these things were.
Right. So that's a great question because it does kind of go to the idea of a nice quality bead that you have inherited, perhaps, like a pearl strand that belonged to someone else that's older. Brandon's nodding.
that has come up in conversation.
So one of the things that happens with silk thread, because it's an organic fiber, is that it does age over time. And aging would give you change in color. So you had lovely white beads and lovely white silk, and then suddenly the silk is sort of yellowy. Also, white silk tends to pick up dirt and look a little tired, even if it's really not. But over time, the silk fiber begins to get a little bit brittle, and it tends to break. I would suspect that if it was a pearl necklace that you wore fairly often, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, fair amount of wear and tear on it, you'd probably get 2 or 3 years out of it knotted on silk, and then it would need to be re-knotted over and over again. We could do it on nylon, though, and leave it, and not really worry about it. So the only place that I've ever seen nylon have a problem, and this is just me, and I'm, of course, telling tales on myself, if you leave your knotted necklace on the dashboard of your car in sun,
Heat melts it.
the heat actually makes the nylon shrink up. And suddenly things are really, really tight. So telling a tale of myself, yes, I was poor. I went to the Renaissance Festival, and I took off my necklace and left it on the dashboard of my car, and I came back, and it was all tightened up because the nylon had shrunk a bit. But it was really a bit of an extreme circumstance. I wouldn't have normally done that.
I see.
So nylon is good in this case. We're really getting a lot more out of that strength and durability. It's also less expensive. We sell, and it's very common to buy a 2-meter card of silk thread with the needle attached. Those are very easy to come by, but they usually cost a couple of bucks each. And you might use, 1 per necklace, or maybe you'd get 1.5 necklaces out of 1 card, and that's a fair amount of money. Whereas I can buy big spools of nylon and get lots and lots of knots out of those.
Right.
So.
And Angela says that won't affect the value of the strand?
No, not at all. I know that being from Northern California, you will have people tell you that the silk has a better vibration, dude. But I don't think it matters that much. So if you feel like you want to have that natural material, by all means do it. But just know that the flip side of that, the change or the difference that that's going to make, is that it's going to be less durable over time. Okay, and not right away, but white silk and white thread tend to get a little dirty a little faster. And another good point, when you decide that you want a white thread and white silk, sit down, clean your table where you're going to work, wash your hands really well, and it just can get the oils and stuff from your hands can make that silk a little bit dirtier.
And do you need to pre-stretch it?
I do like to pre-stretch my silk. Another thing I don't have to do with nylon. So to pre-stretch thread, typically what I would do would take my piece of thread off the card, and I tend to tie a coffee mug on either end. And I just do it temporarily on each handle of each coffee mug, and then I'll hang it over the top of a door. Another word to the wise here, dust the top of your door. It's surprisingly dirty up there. You can also just throw a little hand towel or something up there and hang it over that. But I usually let it hang overnight, and that takes some of the stretch out of it. Because silk over time kind of grows, and that'll also mean something you have to be restrung.
Well, can I ask a question?
Sure.
If you use larger beads and you decide you want to go with the better vibration, the silk.
Yeah.
Are there different weights that you can use? Okay.
Yeah, so
but it's still, you still need to pre-stretch it, you'd still need it.
I would, yeah.
Okay.
So the carded silk starts, I think, at a 0 and goes through like a 14. And those are, as the number's getting bigger, the threads get bigger too, so it's easy. But those big threads are enormous. In fact, that's what this is right here. This is about, it might be maybe a 12 thread size silk. So here's a really pretty fun strand of beads, and I wish I could remember what the name of them was, but I can't. And they have really, really large holes. And so I actually did a double knot.
I love this.
Try to do a little zoom.
Okay, I'll try and hold still. So the double knot was, again, my desire to have a little bit more space here and not add anything extra, right? So instead of one knot between each bead, I actually did 2 knots. So most of the time we're avoiding this look. We want only 1 knot between each bead. In this case, I did it as a purely decorative thought. And I actually have another one over there that's knotted the same way. Those guys. And I don't love it as much. So it's kind of a...
I think the weight of that stone with the thread, how you've double knotted it, really is effective.
Right.
And the color is nice.
And here's
too.
this one with double knots, and it just doesn't send me as much.
Right.
You know?
I agree.
We might have to, when we get closer, we might have to
to look at,
again.
absolutely.
We're in on them, but...
Is everybody liking this stuff? We're getting some happiness?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Excellent. Excellent. Well, good. So I always like to go over kind of what we got going here and what we're making. Brandon, I think this one would look really stunning on you. I think you look really great in greens.
Right.
And this is kind of like right up your alley. So we have 3 different materials to knot here. A glass strand, a 4mm glass strand. This, I think, a 7mm gray. And the 8mm Dakota stone in the matte green adventurine. It's so pretty together.
Really?
Now I did something here to help me bring those strands together, and I used the same color thread to knot them. And one of the nice things about nylon is you can have different sizes in the same colors.
Right.
It's easy to come by.
Right.
I used clamshell bead tips to attach to the chain, and in this case I simply attached all 3 together. I do like to kind of attach them in the same order on each side so they hang very similarly. And I let the shortest strand be sort of my guide. And in this case it's the Dakota stones. So I used the whole 8-inch strand to actually make that decision about the length.
I see.
And I added 2 feet of chain. And this was a choice on my part to use this very thin, sort of disappearing chain, You know, I really liked that it made a layer, but this part of it was going to be very thin and sort of discreet, right? If I was going to go to work in this, in an office maybe, or off to court, or
Right.
off to do something official, it's nice to have that be very sort of in the background. But I think another couple of good chains that you might try out that would look great are these guys. So this is, tell me the name of this one again.
My Fair Lady.
My Fair Lady. I really love these units here, and I could see having this on the other side of 3 strands, give you a little bit more of a beefy look, and a little bit more texture and some more interest going on. It doesn't also have to be this long. We could absolutely add a clasp, and we'll do that with ours.
Okay.
We'll add the clasp.
I'm
Okay.
going to zoom in on that just a little.
Okay. And here's the brass, antique brass in that My Fair Lady is stunning. Look how pretty that is. Right? Brandon's acting as our photographer and our in-house photographer. And another choice that's kind of in the middle between the chain I chose and the My Fair Lady is these tiny lentils, or little lentils. Little lentils? I think they're called little lentils. And I love this chain. It's really, I've been around it a while, and I really like it a lot.
It's delicate, but it has weight.
Yeah. And it looks like little beaded balls, sort
yeah.
of. So it kind of matches up with this, and I think it would look great with that.
Right.
So in this case, because this doesn't have as big a loop, I would cut off the lentil and either attach here to this ring or add a heavy jump
I
ring.
see.
Yeah. And a heavy jump ring's not a big deal to open and close and attach to the end of this chain, and then it gives you a place to hook all your strands
Right.
together. Okay?
Cool.
Yeah. So we're going to use some nylon thread, and I've got this lovely, really yummy deep forest green in 2 sizes. And these are the 2 smaller sizes of our Ceylon, micro and fine. And this always throws me off because micro is the smaller one, fine is the big. Am I wrong?
No way. No
Ah,
way.
get rid of that
get
piece of tape.
for
Thank you. Micro is the smaller one, and fine is the middle one. So we have Ceylon, fine Ceylon, and micro Ceylon. I got it right?
Yes.
Okay. Because I have a little stress about that. Want to make sure I call them the right
fine
thing.
And micro, right?
Regular, fine, and micro. Okay. So we're going to use the regular on the glass and on the Dakota stones, and we're going to use the fine on the pearls. So pearls typically have a fairly small hole. We are using it doubled though, so we're going to get a nice, fairly substantial knot. And if you want to do double knotting on yours, you're most welcome to try that out. I'll show you.
Yeah, I'd
And
love to.
do you want to do the Dakota stone or the pearl or the glass? You have a choice?
I'm gonna try pearls. I actually have never knotted pearls.
Ooh, okay. All right.
You're gonna have to help me with that.
I will totally help you. All right. So we've got some pearls for you
Do
here.
we want to move the camera?
You ready to move the camera?
Give me a couple
Sure.
minutes. I want to just make sure everybody's got the right stuff here, so they have it sort of in
Do
the
you make
list.
up this?
No, not yet. Hang on
Okay.
for a second. I'll show you why in a minute.
Sure.
So we've got pearls, Dakota stone, and we've also got this beautiful 4mm. This one is called, I think, turquoise dust. Moon dust. Turquoise moon dust. Anything that turquoise Picasso-y, and this one's got a little tiny bit of a gold, coppery kind of color.
Right.
So I did choose to do this with the antique copper, which I really like a lot. I think you could make an argument for doing this with the antique bronze as well. I think, but you know, mixing up that green a little bit to give you some more interest is kind of fun. Okay, so we're going to do all 3 of those stones. So we've got some chain, and I've got more chain here. Lucky me. I've got findings. We need some bead tips today. I don't know if you all are familiar with how a clamshell bead tip works. I know you are.
Yeah.
I think Brandon is, but I'm not sure if everybody out there on the internets is. And we're going to work with some bead tips.
Do you want to zoom in on this one?
Yep.
You ready to bring the camera down?
Sure.
All right.
You have to tell me where I'm at in my area here. I think I'm getting close.
There. That's pretty good.
Okay.
Now I'm just straighten the. Okay. Get
So
right
the-
in there.
The
All
bead
right.
tips are how we join the thread to the chain or the thread to the clasp. You know, you could tie your thread onto your chain or clasp, and it would look kind of unattractive maybe and not so secure and messy. But the bead tip really makes a very secure connection. When they're closed, they literally look like a little bead or a little ball. So this is the clamshell bead tip. I like clamshell over cup style, but if you're working with very fine threads with little tiny pearls or smaller beads, you may want to use that cup style. It's a little more delicate.
I see.
Down in the hole of this open clamshell, in the hinge, is a little hole, and that's where our thread's going to go through. And that hole is going to allow me to hide the knot right in between those two clamshells and make it really secure. The loop on the side is what we use to attach to the chain or to our clasp. And again, we want it to look like a very nice rounded finished item when we're done. Okay? I do like a little bit of glue on my knot, and I will always glue my knots, although I'm not fond of glue in lots of other cases.
I see.
Okay? Why am I not fond of glue? Because glue fails sometimes. It's too bad. You know, you have that old bracelet of great grandma's and the rhinestones are all falling out. It's too bad. Right? So I heard there was a question about my favorite tool for knotting. This is my favorite tool, and if you've been watching Facebook, you probably have seen me use this tool often, and Kate likes it too. But I have to say that I'm pretty rarely without an awl in my possession. I keep one in my purse. I definitely have one on my workbench. I have it in my tool bags. They're a really important tool for me. Awls are a sharp-pointed, tapered metal tool. They're pretty pointy at the end, so you want to be a little bit mindful that you don't poke yourself with that, because it gets definitely pretty sharp.
It is sharp, and you were telling me horror stories of how.
Oh, I dropped it on my toe once, and I didn't get my foot out of the way, and it was sticking out of my toe, and it was pretty unpleasant. So be careful with your awl. And if you have little ones at home, you know, awls are probably something that is probably best kept out of little children's hands because it is so pokey and so sharp, right? All right. I also like this needle, and you know, there are a few things when you are beading that become sort of like a miracle when you find out about them. Bead tips for me were one thing, and the awl, but we're going to use a collapsible eye needle today. So a collapsible eye needle is made out of a piece of wire that's bent in half, and it's then twisted together. So the eye is just part of the wire that it's made out of. When we go through our first bead or the first bead tip, that eye will collapse and stay small until you're finished. When you're done with that needle, you can actually put your awl in there and open up the eye again so that you can reuse it. And I probably get 2 or 3 uses out of each needle. At some point that eye will break though. So, and if I'm doing something where I'm having to pull through fairly firmly, I will probably use a fresh needle. So let's get you one of those guys.
I'm sorry, I think this is the flexible eye needle. I think I misspoke. Let me go grab the collapsible just to show.
Okay. Really, that eye just makes it easy to thread with any size thread, and it's safe. It's not pokey. You don't have to worry about losing it.
Sorry, this is the flexible.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it collapses.
Yeah, they kind of do the same thing. The collapsible one, to show you what the difference looks like, this actually has a nifty little twist at the end, right up here. And that little twist actually holds the thread really nicely. If you're using a cut piece of thread and only a single thread, this works great. We don't really need it here because we're going to use double thread. Okay. Okay?
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you for grabbing that for me.
No problem.
So I'm going to take a piece of thread from my spool of nylon. I need a thread that's about 3 times the length of the strand I think I'm going to make. So my strand here of Dakota stone beads is 8 inches long. So I'm going to start with getting myself at least 24 inches, made about 3 times.
Okay.
And I'm going to double that to 48 inches because I'm using double thread. So that math is always a little bit confusing. But figure, if I was knotting a strand of 16 inches, I'd want about 3 times that, so about
Okay.
48 inches, and then double that would be 96. So it does get longer and longer. You can't really add thread too easily in the middle of this project. So in fact, I wouldn't. I would just start over.
Yes, sir.
So I want to make sure I have plenty of thread. And again, thread is inexpensive.
Right. I have a question before
Sure.
we move on. If you were to use, let's say you were going to string up
Mhm.
this 8-inch strand,
Sure.
how long would it become if you knotted each bead?
I'll show you.
Okay.
Let me just grab that thread off. So here's the 8-inch knotted strand in comparison. And I'm going to say I gained about
5 beads.
5 beads width,
1.5 inches?
inch and a half, maybe 1.75 inches. Where's my most handy ruler ever in the whole wide world? Right?
Oh. Yeah,
About 1.75 inches. Right?
that's great.
Yeah. So one thing you can actually do is test your own personal knotting styles. If you tend to work like I do with bigger beads and bigger thread, you'll find that over the course of each piece, you'll gain a little more length than you would on the last one. So for instance, let's have a measure on, why don't you measure 2 inches of beads here,
Okay.
and then count how many pearls are in that 2 inches.
Do you want me to cut it off yet or no?
Nope. I'm not a fast cutter.
About 9.
Okay. So let's see what 2 inches of knotted pearls comes up to be. 1, 2, 3. About 9 too. So I didn't gain very much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. You sure you had 9 unknotted? Oh, of course.
Of
Yes,
course.
it would take less beads to make the 2 inches. So about 1 bead's worth gain.
Okay, okay.
So maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 1/4 inch gained, right?
Okay.
Right. So for sure, we're going to get more length than we imagined when we knot with beads. Okay.
Do you have a request from Janice to
Sure.
talk about getting the knot the right size for the clamshell so it doesn't break through the hole?
Ah,
'Cause we
very
did
well.
have some
I
problems with that earlier.
definitely will talk about that. That's a very good point, JP. Thank you so much for mentioning it.
Yeah, Gail,
And
I guess, has had some problems. So.
Oh, okay, okay. So clamshell bead tips come with different size holes. And I have to say that one of the things I admire about thebeadshop.com, and this is not necessarily true across every bead shop that you're going to encounter, I'm very proud to say that beadshop.com goes to extreme lengths to tell you what size the hole is in things. And that's not common across our industry. The hole size in the clamshell bead tip, we carry both a 0.026 and 0.036 hole size. So if your thread, you're having a hard time getting your knot big enough to stay inside the bead tip, because that's a requirement, then you can use a smaller hole bead tip, the 0.026 rather than the 0.036. Or you can make your knot bigger, either way. One way to do that is to actually tie a seed bead into your knot, and that will give you a bigger knot and act as a stopper really well. But I'm so proud of Janice and for starting off that way and instilling this idea that it's super important to know technically how big those holes are.
Right.
And I think we do it with every bead and every item that we have on the website. And that is not, it's not consistent across our industry.
Got it.
So use a smaller hole, choose a bead tip with a smaller hole in it, or make that knot bigger. And I can show you a couple tricks for that, but tying a seed bead in that knot,
That's really smart.
it's a great place for a black seed bead, right?
Right.
I guess Gail says her problem wasn't the knot breaking through the hole, it was the loop. The loop straightened out when she gave it the tug test.
Ah. So there's another type of bead tip you can also do that has a hole punched in it. And we carry that, right? A bead tip that has a hole in it? No? Okay. Some bead tips don't have that hook on it. They might have a little tab with a hole that you can actually string onto a jump ring. And Gail, I would prefer that your bead tip fail in that manner then have your thread break. So in a funny way, I'm okay with that happening. I probably wouldn't have given it the tug test, nor would I let a 2-year-old try and do a chin-up on my necklace at that point, you know? But that's kind of okay, and there's another little trick that will help somewhat with that. So we're going to get there, don't you worry.
Okay.
Okay? So I've cut my 48-inch long piece of thread, and I'm going to string it on a needle. And I'm going to pull the needle through. I realize I go out of frame here. So imagine that my needle is now down halfway down my thread in the middle, right? And I'm going to tie some knots here to stay inside my bead tip. To do that, I like to tie what's called a surgeon's knot. So I wrap it around my finger, and I feed the ends through not once, but twice. It's a little springy. It's all right. And this will help making a fairly good sized knot. If you watch it, it binds up on itself. And that gives you a little bit of a bulkier knot. But I also tie a second one on top of the first. And this one I'll just go through the one time. And that makes a nice fat knot.
How do you get it to land on itself?
Patience, my good friend. Patience, grasshopper. Just go slow, and it should land right on itself. Okay. All right? So separate the 2 strands and tighten it up, and then we're going to use our friend the glue. I prefer hypo cement glue.
Use a baggie.
No, I don't need a baggie. Kate can.
She has been on already today.
Hi, Kate. Kate doesn't. What Kate doesn't need to know. Kate doesn't need to know.
Nervous laughter.
Unless she's heading to the airport.
So when I glue, I tend to wet the knot on both sides, just like that. And that's all the glue I really need. I don't usually put it on a baggie, but you can if you want. Top back on there. All right. So there's my knotted and glued knot. I'm going to grab that needle. And you know, my thread does have some Shirley Temple curls in it right at the moment.
Here, let me hold the glued knot.
Sure, you can hold that for me. One thing we can do with nylon thread, which is helpful, is to give it a little bit of a stretch to pull out some of that kinky curly bits. Right? I got it.
You got it?
Yeah. And if you can see, I've got some curls happening here. It's not a fuzzy day. It's not a humid day here in the Bay Area. We just have curls. Okay. So now I'm all good. And I think the next couple steps that I show you might be sort of revolutionary for you. I don't know. There's my wet gluey knot. I'm going to pick up my bead tip, and on this first side of my bead tip, my first side of my necklace, I'm actually going to put my needle through from the inside of the clamshell to the outside. Okay? And even though I can't really see that knot, I can trust that it's in the hinge, right? And I just aim for it. And I'm going to pull my needle through and pull all my thread through, come on, all the way down and through. And my knot's going to land right inside that bead tip. Just like that. Okay? So ultimately I'm going to trim off these tails of thread, and I'm going to close this clamshell by pinching it with my plier. But before I do that, I'm going to let this glue dry. So I tend to let my glue dry pretty long term, right? I want it to really, really be complete. Here's another strand that I couldn't help but knot, because I just think this is the most beautiful stone ever. This is the porcelain Picasso jasper. Yeah, we got a bunch of it. Yep, yeah, we do. We actually have a fair amount. Right?
Nobody can see you do that. So.
Oh, well. We're reaching behind us and grabbing, because we can touch stuff on the wall back here. So here's what it looks like when I've finished knotting a strand of beads, but before I attach it to my clasp or my chain. And I'm going to finish this off in a minute or two, and you'll get to see how that works, okay? So once I've got my bead tip on, I'm ready to string some beads. Now, Grace has been sitting next to me going, can I cut these pearls? Can I cut these pearls? Really anxiously. And what I have found over the years is that the less I cut things quickly, the less cleanup work and the less organization work I have to do later. So I have a tendency to make it as easy on myself as possible to get my beads from one thread to another thread. Okay? So with the Dakota stones, they come on a piece of monofilament, and I can bring in my thread snips here and I can cut that. And I can actually push my beads off one thread and onto that needle by sliding the needle up through to transfer one to the other. Okay? And what I like about doing this is that I never have loose beads flying around. Okay? And if I can't do that, which you won't be able to, when I pull the beads out of the thread, I keep them in a row, and it allows me to put on more than one bead at a time. Yes, you can put this on the Emily's Tips page, that I really prefer to get things transferred over as quickly as possible so my beads aren't loose. I know the natural habitat of the bead is the floor, but you know what? I'd rather have my beads on my string. And so I don't know if you guys do this, other folks do this when you're knotting. I tend to put all my beads on my string before I start to knot. Do you do that too?
I do.
Awesome.
But I wouldn't have done it with the pearls just because they're so small, but I will because you're here and you're telling me to. No, I might actually end up liking it, so.
Well, you know what? I feel like it's a little more efficient.
Sure.
And,
that makes sense.
you know, not having loose beads, you know, if you were going to go on a plane trip, you know, you could take these with you and do your knotting on the plane. You just had a really long plane tip, you know, and I'm sure you would have loved to have had something you could be doing along the way. I get bored of watching movies or listening to music or reading even, and so I've always got a little project of some sort that I'm working on in my purse, right? And so that was 8 inches of beads transferred over in just a couple, maybe 3 or 4 minutes.
Not even.
Not even. And now I don't have any loose beads to sort of deal with, right? And there's the extra thread left over. Okay? And so here's all my beads already on my thread and secure. Now, we are knotting with doubled thread here. And when you work with doubled thread, you want to remember that it's imperative to keep those doubled threads even. Right now, and for most of this knotting, we're going to pretend that those doubled threads are just one thread. So they act as one. You don't want to pretend that they're two until we have to have a little moment with them. Okay? All right? So, Gracie, while I start this off, I'm going to let you kind of get started on yours.
That sounds really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have a needle there and some bead tips, right?
So I'm going to triple this. Like,
well, we're not going to use the whole strand.
We're only going to use about this.
Yeah, we're going to use maybe half of it. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I would do, if you say this is 8 inches, so again we need about 48 inches of thread, right?
Right.
Okay. Everybody good? We got any questions? Brandon, how's it going?
They're discussing clamshells and a few things, and they really like putting the beads onto the thread first.
Good.
So that went over
We
quite
got
well.
thumbs up on that.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. You know, the other thing that you'd need to do once you put your beads on is make sure there's a way for them not to come off the other end. And there's actually things we've already talked about here at beadshop.com, ways to fix that. You can actually use either a bead stopper, which is the little springy guy like this, and slip your thread into it, and that'll keep your beads from coming off. Or if you happen to have your handy dandy clampers around, we love those. So those you can actually clamp on a thread as well. And that just serves to keep the beads from getting lost, right? And coming off that end of the thread. So, oh man, sip of water. It's time. So when I knot my beads, I do like to clear the decks just a little bit. And by that I mean get rid of anything that I might get tangled up in. And sometimes this even includes taking off my jewelry, but I don't think I'll have to do that today. So I'm going to start knotting this strand a little bit. And I'm going to begin with knotting after that first bead. Years ago, I was taught to knot by a young lady whose parents and grandparents were both in the jewelry trade. And she said, yeah, we never knot next to a metal thing. And I thought, that's interesting. And I said, why not? She said, I don't know. That's what they told me. And so I believed her. She's several third-generation jeweler. And as I began to experience a little bit more of this, one of the things I noticed about a lot of metal things, so beads, clamshells, is the hole's kind of large there. And often you can't knot next to that metal thing because the knot will slip inside. So I think that's kind of where that came from historically. But I don't tend to knot right up against my clamshell. I start the knot after my first bead. All right? So I pulled one bead out of my group down to the clamshell and the knot, and now I'm going to proceed to knot. It might take me about 25 minutes or so to knot this 8-inch strand. I expect it might take you a little longer, or anyone out there.
Because there's more beads to knot.
Right, and I've also been doing this for a little bit longer.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm going to make a knot, and this is just your garden variety overhand knot. So this knot actually has a name, right? And I do that by wrapping the thread around my fingers to create a loop. And I'm going to push through the bead from the strand and pull it through that knot. Okay? So I've made my knot, my overhand knot. And when I look at that overhand knot, I'm kind of noticing that it's got a couple of different areas. It's got one area where the threads cross itself, and then another loop area or belly area. Okay? I always want my tool, my awl, to go into that belly side. Okay? I don't want to try and put my awl over here because that won't help me. I want it over here in the loose loop. Okay? So I'm going to now tighten up that loop a bit with my awl in it. And you can actually use the fatter part of the awl for this portion because it keeps the knot somewhat open. Okay? And then all I need to do is push down on my awl towards my bead. And the knot moves right along the thread down to the bead. And as I scoot down the awl to the smaller and smaller part, I tighten the knot as I go along. And one last little tighten, and I'm going to pull the tip of the awl out. Okay?
Janice says she learned not to knot the knot next to the clamshell or metal because the silk or nylon is exposed to wear of the metal and will eventually cut.
There you go. And I'm going to take my 2 strands and separate them and give it a little tug. And that helps tighten that knot, make it a little more uniform shape, and move it a little closer to the bead as well. Okay? So I'm going to bring another bead along. And now you can see what it looks like to have a knot that keeps the beads apart. I could make a slightly smaller knot here. Typically, I actually really like to see the knot, though. So in this case, it's okay that my knot's real visible. I'm going with that. All right? I'm going to repeat that a few times. I'm going to wrap it around my fingers, and I'm going to feed through the beads. And I really notice that the times I have the most smoothness with this is when I put through the last added bead first. So this loose bead goes through first, and it drags along all the other pieces with it. And it goes through. Okay? I'm going to hold my knot open, get my awl, tighten the awl up to the knot up to the awl, excuse me, and then slide it down. Now, do you notice how my awl is sort of pointing upwards as well? This is a good way to keep that knot from sliding off too quickly, is have my awl pointing up allows me a little bit more control on letting gravity do a little bit of the work for me. In this case, gravity's a good thing. Okay? 2 knots.
Angela would like to know if there's a top or bottom to the knots, meaning if you change your angle, will the knot look different?
No. The knots are consistent.
And somebody asked about putting a smaller bead next to the...
Absolutely. One could use a seed bead, Ginger, hi Ginger, One could use a seed bead in between each of these beads to act as the knot, to give you that little spacer, and it would help the beads from rubbing on one another, for sure. That's looking okay. I'm going to continue. So notice how I put that last added bead through first. If I were to put this end through, there's always a chance that I'd get caught somewhere along the line. But if I go through last added bead first, flips right through, tighten it up. Here's another trick. Keep your finger on the knot when you make it. Tighten, tighten, tighten.
And Rasha would like to, would ask what if she wants a bigger knot?
Bigger thread. Yep. So we could go up a size in thread. Right now, these beads are sliding pretty easily on this thread, which means I could actually go up a size. I could probably go down a size as well. What would happen by going down a size is my knot would get smaller, and I might run the risk of having it slip inside the beads. These beads have very generous holes for a stone bead.
And Pamela missed the beginning, so
okay.
You do always use a double string.
I do.
Yes.
Well, Pamela, that's always is a very long time. So, do I always use a double thread? No, not always. Sometimes I have beads that have such small holes that it's difficult to get a double thread through. So I might end up using a single thread for that same reason.
But as Janice says, when you take the awl out, you don't have the advantage of the two threads to separate and tighten.
That's correct, JP. So one of the things that happens with using a single strand, and we can do single strand, it's not difficult, not at all, is I tend to use a different tool. I use a tweezer instead of an awl when I'm using single strands. And I find the tweezer gives me a little bit more control of placing that knot initially. If you go to look at the tin cup necklace project, which is actually in the Skill Builders? No,
I think it's an old class handout.
It's in class handouts folder. Janice maybe can throw you a link, or Gita. The tin cup necklace uses a tweezer, and I would use a tweezer in exactly the same fashion if I was using single thread. But with double thread, an awl works really, really well.
And Rasha says, sorry, she meant can we make a bigger knot from the same thread size?
That would be tougher, Rasha, and I hear what you're saying. If I make a bigger knot, I could go through it twice the way I did at the beginning, and that would give me a slightly larger knot, but not terribly larger. So doing double knots, 2 knots, one on top of the other, is possible, but I think it's going to be a slower, more tedious process. It's happening, it's happening, it's happening. Going right along.
And somebody asked about widening the hole, but I can't find
Do we have bead reamers? Do we
We do.
bead reamers?
I think we do.
So a bead reamer is a tool, a diamond tipped tool that would allow you to make a hole larger, and that's something that's available and we carry it. There are both electric and hand powered models. I would be remiss if I told you I use the hand powered model. I use the electric one.
The tools, but it doesn't seem like we have any in stock.
Okay. Oh yeah, we don't have any more of these. Is this it?
No, we have,
we
but
have-
we don't have
okay.
the actual
The
tool
handle.
stock,
Okay.
so.
So if you happen to use a Dremel tool, you can actually load these in your Dremel. So these are diamond tipped tools, and these two will help you enlarge holes in beads. This particular cone-shaped one is really great for refining a hole that's maybe cracked or not very symmetrically round. So I would put these in a Dremel, add a little bit of water, and then slide the bead up this as the Dremel's turning, and let it grind away. Water helps make this diamond bit last longer, and lubricates and keeps the bead cool. It also helps remove the stuff that you're grinding away. So it has all those benefits. This is a set of 3 replacement reamer bead sets. They work great. Especially good with pearls or any other very soft stone. A longer, slower process if we're talking about something that's a quartz or something very durable, harder stone.
I know that from doing it the hard way.
You know, if I had a problem where I needed to just grind out 2 or 3 stones, I would probably go ahead and ream them out. If I had a problem where I had to grind out a strand of stones, I would probably figure out another way around. In that case, I might resort to soft flex and a seed bead in between each one. That's be my my process. Okay. So it's coming right along, moving right through, right? Not terribly difficult. So one of the things that can happen if you don't leave yourself enough thread is that you use up all your thread and knotting, and you don't really have enough left to manipulate and make the knots. So remember that thread is fairly inexpensive in comparison to your time and energy of having to do this, and I would want to not get too skimp out on thread and have too little to work with.
Also learned that the hard way.
Oh, good girl. Yeah? Awesome. That's so exciting. I know, really, it's kind of horrible to have that happen to you.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Experience is a great teacher.
Oh,
It is.
experience is a hard mistress for sure. But you don't have to do that more than once.
Nope.
What is it the saying is, those who fail to learn from their mistakes or learn from history are doomed to repeat it. You know, we all like to say, well, maybe that was a fluke, and maybe I'll get the next one. So I'm getting a little bit of a twist in my thread,
I
and
think you're hypnotizing people. as
am
well.
I? Awesome. I'm going to untwist my thread a little bit just to keep things nice and smooth. People are watching and being soothed by the rhythm of this. You know, knotting can be very rhythmic, and having that double strand to separate gives that last knot, last little tug on the knot, very satisfying shape.
Do you have any sort of a formula for how much thread to use?
I use about 3 times what I think my finished length is going to be. So if I have a strand of 8-inch beads, I need about 24 inches of thread. If I'm going to do it doubled, I then have to double that. Okay, so 24 times 2 was 48 inches, about where I started on this one. You know, if I use the carded silk and it has a needle attached, that can maybe go for 1 to 2 bracelets, or maybe a necklace, and it might have a little bit of leftover. But sometimes not even that. So okay, and voila, knotted strand.
I actually started with the wrong threads. I had to start over.
Oh, okay. Well, you're catching up then.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So does this make sense to everybody? Everybody's on board with all that, how that came about, right? Good.
No fresh questions.
I'm not hearing any screams of
you on,
agony or
On the next strand, can you show us how to do that double knot?
yes,
Okay.
I will do that.
Okay. Sweet.
Okay, cool.
Got it.
See, it's easy to make requests and get them fulfilled. So on this end of the necklace, I'm going to add the clamshell in the opposite direction.
With no knot after that last beat.
Correct.
Janice one was
Emphatically suggesting. Correct. With no knot after that last bead. All right. So this time I'm going to go from outside to inside instead of inside to outside. So I'm going to look at the bead tip and put my needle through the hole in the hinge of the bead tip. Slide it down. And now my next problem to solve is getting that new knot down inside that clamshell bead tip. Okay? And I'm going to do it the same way I have been doing it. I'm going to just pretend that's a bead. This time I will go through twice, come around, go through once, go through twice, and this will give me a little bit bulkier knot and a more secure one as well. I'm going to bring it right down in between the clamshells, tighten it up, and slide out my awl.
Are you using beeswax at all?
I'm not. I would probably not use beeswax because it's going to make dirt attract to my thread. If you find that at the place where the needle is and the beads are slipping over the needle and it's a little tight, I could see putting a little beeswax there, but that would probably be just a small amount to give it a little bit of a ease over that spot, but that would be about it. Okay? So now I can cut off the extra thread that I've got. And I'm going to take these two strands and tie one more knot like I was tying my shoe. Right over left and around.
And you're going to show a close-up of the
Left over right and then around. I can.
I can get up there too. Do my part.
Let me hold still, because
Yeah.
I'm sure that's probably more helpful than me bouncing around trying to do something.
Yeah, that's part of it.
How's that?
Right in on there. Okay.
Okay. So I'll put some glue on that knot. The glue is helpfully oozing out, but no longer wet. Awesome. Okay. So that one's ready to set aside for the moment. So when I go in to clip off the thread, the extra thread, and I happen to have one right here, it's ready to get clipped, I will do it with a little bit of tension because I really want to cut in there as closely as I can. So I'm going to take my little thread snips and get right in there and trim it off, okay? So that really all the thread is retained within the clamshell. There's none poking out. And if you're feeling fuzzy about that, like it's not working, trim one thread at a time. That's all right.
And somebody asked, Sylvia asked, what could be used instead of an awl?
Knotting tweezers.
Knotting tweezers or big safety pin. Something sharp, pointed metal, tapered item. Didn't we give away awls? I think we did give away awls in the giveaway not too long, not too far back. But they're an inexpensive tool that we sell, and it's something that's totally doable. Okay? So this strand is ready to go, and I'll let this guy dry. And I'm going to pull some more thread off to do my silver beads with. All right? And
Are they silver or are they the blue ones?
you're right. It's the green ones.
We can mix it up.
No. Didn't I have another strand of these?
Right there.
There they are. Awesome. You're right. I kept looking at those silver ones and was getting so excited about them. So when I use glass beads, one of the things that's great about them is that they do tend to have a large hole and a consistent one. But that hole could be so big in comparison to the size of the bead, it does make it a little bit frustrating to have to use a bigger thread here. okay? I want the knot to stay on the outside of the bead. I don't want it to slip through. One thing you can do with every project that you accomplish is take your leftover thread. So this is a piece of the thread that I just cut off, that I just finished with. I can go ahead and tie a single knot here at the end. So that would be the knot that would be in between the beads. Grab a loose bead and send it down the line. And this gives me an idea of what the knot looks like next to the bead. Okay? If I have too fine a thread, and that bead will just slip over the knot, then I know I've got the wrong size thread. All right? This is not long enough for me to use again, so I'm going to start a fresh one.
If the loop breaks off the clamshell, is there any way to salvage it without restringing?
No. I'll be really honest with you.
Sorry, Tammy.
No. Sorry, Tammy. I wish there was, but there really isn't a way. I would go ahead and restring it and figure that if that hadn't happened, the thread probably would have failed at some point in the not too distant future. Unfortunately, clamshells are not terribly durable if you choose to open and close them multiple times. And you notice that I haven't closed mine yet, so I haven't really done it. I'm going to wait till the very last moment to do that job, and that will be the time that they just get closed that one time. They're not going to get open and closed multiple times. So that's the fact of life. All right. So I'm going to start up my fresh thread the same way I did it last time, which is nice to kind of get to see this a couple of times. Grace is nodding away beside me. How's it going?
It's going. I'm almost done.
Good. Good girl.
And I'm kind of playing with the pearls as I'm knotting them after I tighten each knot, just so that it's not crinkly.
Ah, can I talk to you about that little bit of crinkly issue?
Yes.
Well,
it's not too bad.
No. So Grace is referring to a common problem that happens when you're knotting, that because the knots themselves are somewhat uneven, this single one pass-through knot, I often see this pieces looking like this with a little bit of kind of kinkiness to them. You know, a little bit of kinky's good, right? I'm going to take away that kinkiness and make this even more fluid as well by doing something really nice to these beads. I'm going to give them a little bit of a massage. I'm going to actually push on these beads in my hands, pushing one bead against each knot and moving along. What I'm attempting to do here is push on more than one bead at a time. So can you see the difference? No more kinky curliness. Nice and straight and drapey. Lovely. Look at that fluidity of that. Isn't that beautiful? I love that. It's my favorite part. So here I've got my new knot. I'm going to put a bead tip on there. And, oh no, I almost grabbed the wrong color. Yikes.
You'd have to restrung it.
Oh, that would be very hard. Not really. So with bead tips, you need a pair for every piece of jewelry that you make. In this case, because we're having 3 strands, I'm going to have 3 pair of bead tips. Okay? So it's something where you're going to want to make sure you have enough. And I'm going to go through from the inside to the outside. Slide my bead tip down. Get everybody all tangled up. That bead tip down there. And that's exactly right. Okay. Okay, let's transfer some beads from this strand onto my needle and thread. So same thing would happen on this one. I will actually cut the stringy material it's on right now and transfer from one string to the other. If you're not doing this, you have way more time than I do, right? So if it's on monofilament like this clear sort of fishing line, it's actually holding the holes right in the right direction, and I can transfer 7 or 8 beads at a time.
Okay, I have a question.
Okie dokie.
Okay, I'm done now.
Awesome.
How did you, or how are you going to see how they line up with each other?
So in this particular design, I used the shortest strand to help me decide the lengths.
Right.
Okay. And you know, having a few, I've got a horrible tangle here. Having a few strands to play with is really nice. I went ahead and knotted all of the size 8 millimeter beads from Dakota Stones. And then I fit in amongst them the other two. Oh, that guy was coming off. So I thought that to have large in the middle, medium below, and small above kind of made sense. All right? We could have done this small, medium, large. So I could have made the pearls up in here if I wanted to. But I thought that was a little bit predictable. Okay? So I chose to have a longer strand underneath that size 8 millimeter beads, and then finish off with a shorter strand up here.
How do you make sure that, because I'm looking at the necklace you're wearing right now and it's draping really nicely. Do you just kind of gauge with your hands?
Yep. And I really did maybe an inch and 2 1/4 inches, maybe longer. And on this one, maybe it's about a 1/2 inch shorter. So I had all the strands in my hands, partially finished, and I picked them up and hung them up just like that. Less science than you think.
Let me compare, because I don't think this is nearly as long as yours.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need a few more.
I do.
Gracie needs to make a few more knots. That's okay. It's perfect.
All right.
So the other advantage to pre-stringing your beads is at any point you feel like you need to add a few more or take a few off, you can do that. And it's not a big deal, right? I've got some of my beads on here. I could just stop right here and start knotting. I don't have to wait for anything except for my clamp. There it is. So I put my clamp on my thread to make sure that my other beads don't get away. And Grace asked me to
Yes, please.
Grace asked me to show you how I did this technique here, where I knotted twice in between each bead. Really? All right.
I just want to learn how to do it because I think it looks really great on the piece that you've brought in.
So I'm going to go ahead and make my first knot.
Very quiet.
Oh, okay. I need to
I'm
chat.
focusing.
Okay, we're focused. We're both focusing. Everybody
I'm heavy
okay?
breathing over Emily's shoulder as she's doing this. I see.
Okay.
And I see what you mean when you were showing this quartz, this rutilated quartz example.
It just
With
doesn't
the
move
smaller
me.
beads. Yeah.
Doesn't move me quite as
Right.
much,
Right.
right? So this was sort of a trial. But did you notice that I have not yet separated the two strands to pull it up tight? Because that means I can actually undo this still. So not only are awls great at tying knots, they're really, really, really useful for untying knots. And if this doesn't make you buy an awl, I don't know what else I can say. Right? Because it's a pretty useful tool. when it takes out knots that you've tied and you changed your mind about.
It doesn't damage the thread either because the point is so fine. You have total control.
I just want to go right up in there, and I'm just going to keep wiggling that knot apart and wiggling and wiggling. And I might go in from the other side and try over there. Even if you split your thread a little bit, it doesn't tend to break the thread, which is okay. That next bit of thread's going to be hiding under a bead. Oh my goodness. Look at that.
Got it?
I do. What do you think? No, we're not.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. Really, having an awl, boy, if you work with thread at all, the awl is worth its weight in gold sometimes, right? So I've tightened up that knot. I took out the one I didn't care for and pulled down another bead. Go ahead and knot it.
Got some people talking about our lapis, and I thought maybe
Oh.
you'd like to show it to them if you
Yeah.
get a chance.
The matte lapis.
Yeah.
Look how pretty that is. What color do you think you'd want to string that with, Grace?
Well, I was telling you, I love browns with blues. Wasn't that one of the examples you showed this morning? There was, it was like a champagne with the blue.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Mm-hmm. No, I think we were talking about this leather one.
Yeah. That's what it was. It was before
So,
we went on air.
yeah, there's a, Janice maybe can help me with this. I know there's kind of a golden brown nylon that's one of my favorites. And maybe she can link that one for us.
Let's do it.
And I think that would look really, really nice with that lapis. You know, the other thing that would look good with it would be black. I could even see a light gray with that. Because the light gray in here would really pop out a bit and come forward.
Can I have the sample? I'm sorry.
Sure.
So we also got a question,
Assembly.
and I'm not quite sure how to ask it.
You're
If
paraphrasing?
No, I'm trying
right.
to read it exactly. If you are using number 18 Ceylon doubled because of the size of the hole in the beads,
Yes.
would 2 strands of the Ceylon number 18 fit through the hole in the clamshell ending? If not, what are the options for a professional looking end to the knotted strand?
It probably would go through the large size bead tip, the .036 hole.
But as a single knot, not doubled?
No, double. I think it would be okay. There are some other options for ending thread to your clasp. And really what I think about when I'm going to attach a thread to a clasp is that I'm making a joint or a link. So I want that link or joint to be flexible, and I want it to be durable, and then I also want it to look good. So one way to do that is to use what's called bullion wire. And bullion wire is a very fine coil of thread, a very fine coil of wire that, because it's a coil like a slinky, has a hole down the middle. And you cut a small piece of it and you string it over your thread, and so it rides against the clasp. Your thread goes through your bead, through the bullion wire, over the clasp, and then back through your bead. And believe it or not, I think you guys have been looking at one all day. Do you notice what's happening here at the end of this clasp? There's a very fine coil of wire that my thread goes through. So it comes from inside the bead, goes through that coil of wire, and then back down into the beads and ties off. So if you were to look at this necklace very closely, you'd see that there are not double knots here. There are only singles. Okay? But hopefully no one would notice that. I like the finish of bullion wire quite a bit. And it does necessitate, though, that my holes in my stones are big enough to take 2 of my threads, or 4 if I'm using double thread. So that's a place where I can totally get behind a bead reamer. All right, so maybe I have to ream out the holes in 2 beads at each end of my strand. Okay, that's not so bad, right? Doable,
Yeah.
and sort of livable. Grab those pearls of mine down there with the white pendant on the front.
And Janice said it was the chestnut Ceylon.
Chestnut. Thank you, Janice. So here's bullion wire again, going through the loop of the clasp and then back through the pearls. So I really only had to ream out 4 pearls, 2 on one side, 2 on the other, to have that bullion wire be the protector for my thread. But see how nice and flexible that joint is, that link, like an elbow or a wrist. It moves in all the directions, right? I like using bullion wire. It's one of my favorites. I don't always use it, but I do like it a lot.
And you've got some question about the stones you were.
These guys?
Yeah.
These are pearls. Freshwater pearls with a pendant that I made myself out of metal clay.
Nice.
And set a stone in. Another pearl. Right?
Okay. You don't have to teach me to use.
Did you say what size bullion?
Actually, I didn't, because that was homemade bullion. So I made my own bullion because I couldn't find commercially what I wanted. So I took very fine wire, 28 gauge, 26 or 28 gauge, and wound it over thinner gauges of wire. So bullion will come in several different sizes as well, and you want to get it big enough to accept your thread easily. Okay? Most bullion wire also is not precious metal, so if you're doing a very fine strand of pearls, you may want to research a bit and find some that's 14 karat gold or sterling silver if you want to keep that quality as high as possible.
What did you call it earlier?
Bullion?
The Bay Area, the word for the word used for silk.
Vibrations?
No, the vibration.
Dude. Man. So I have a great funny bead story I'll tell you guys too about the vibrations. You know, a lot of folks put a fair amount of credence to the idea that stones are helpful in a metaphysical sort of way. I sort of think that it has more to do with the person wearing the stones than the stones themselves. But I was at a bead store, working at a bead store one day, and a gentleman came in and he said, "Is this rose quartz?" And I said, "Yes." He was holding a strand of rose quartz. I said, "Yes, it is." He says, "Oh, great. My healer told me I needed some rose quartz." And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "I'm to soak it in some water and then drink the water." And I said, "Well, I would wash it first." And he says, "No, I don't want to." And I said, "Well, you know, it kind of might be dirty. It might come from a place where the hygiene was not the greatest." "Yeah, but I don't want to mess it up." I said, "Okay." So I sold him a strand of rose quartz, and he went off into the sunset with his rose quartz. But the Bay Area, you know, sometimes we have some folks that, you know, I don't know. I hope it helped him. I hope he didn't get anything from it. So.
Well, if anything, maybe his immune system got a little stronger.
That's true. That's very true. You know. So, you know, the metaphysical qualities of stones sometimes is a little bit more about what the person who's doing it thinks. It's a positive reinforcement thing. Right? And that's all to the good. We use positive reinforcement all the time.
Right.
So I'm 100% behind that. I'm also 100% behind making jewelry for people when they're having a tough time. And that lets them know that I was thinking of them and I put some effort and thought into a piece of jewelry just for them, for this occasion, or for just the pleasure of making it for them and thinking of them. And I do that quite often for folks. So it gives me great pleasure to make things for other people. And hopefully they wear them in good health. Now what, Brando and
No,
Cher?
No, she's
I'm just really enjoying my beautiful.
Oh, Brando's new birthday necklace. Very lovely piece. I like to, I will have to see it. We will have to show it off in a minute or two when we get.
Being a recipient of jewelry, I will say it is. It's a happy thing either way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
No,
delightful.
it's delightful. And, you know, it means somebody was thinking of you and they thought of you enough to spend time for you and took into consideration your likes and dislikes and tried to accomplish that.
Favorite colors.
Yeah, always asking favorite colors is a good one.
It is, as we say, the time of year. It is an awesome Christmas present too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Birthday, Christmas,
yeah.
special occasion.
Yes, absolutely. I made multiple necklaces for my niece when she got married for her bridesmaids. I could not have been more excited to do that. And, you know, I had a little piece in her wedding. So, how we doing? Questions, comments? Doing okay?
Yeah, we're doing all right.
All right. We're getting real close.
Do you have the glue? Sorry, I thought
Yeah.
I had it.
I have it over here.
Thank you.
Sure. In fact, I think we can actually go ahead with Grace's piece in tow. And I think you guys will all kind of get where I'm going with this next one. Do you want to use the little lentils?
Oh, she was asking, I think, more about the stones on those stones.
These guys. What these are? Do you know? I don't remember. They might be some sort of a boulder opal, because there's a couple here that have sort of an opalescent-y sort of quality to them. They're very pretty, and I really liked them a lot.
Now the color's great.
I bought one strand, which is not usually my style. I try to buy multiples of things because I always love them and want more. So, once upon a time, I bought those somewhere.
Do you want to use, or do you want to just use this guy?
It's entirely up to you. Should we get the copper? Do you want to get the copper little lentils, and we'll use that?
Sure.
Okay. And do you want to make this one a little shorter? We'll make it with a clasp on it.
All right. Do you want me to pull clasp?
Yeah, would you pull the little lobsters?
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead, because I see what time it is. It's getting there, to wrapping this guy up. And I'm just going to finish it with 2 strands, which is another option, you know. You don't always have to put what I tell you to do. Well, yes, I want you to do what I tell you, but you don't always have to do it, you know, 100%. Grace is going to grab 2 feet. Oh, how about a foot and a half, Grace? Yeah. Of some little lentil chain in a copper. So this guy right here. And I have jump rings already. Yep.
I'm just getting the lobster.
Okay. If you want to just bring a little pack of them, I'll put them in here. Oh, I have them. Yep. I have them already. Sorry.
How about a foot and then some?
Okay. Perfect.
Do you have cutters?
Yep. Do I? I have everything.
Yay! This is long.
Yeah, perfect. So here is some charming little lentil chain. I mean, how cute is that stuff, right? It's the best. So we're going to go ahead and close up these clamshells, trim off our thread, and attach them to our chain. It seems to me that we would be able to put all 3 strands on here pretty easily. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove the extra little bit of lentil.
I have your
You do. So I'm going to come in here very carefully and just cut across where I know that that hole is on the lentil. So I've just got a bare ring. And I think I'm going to do that on both sides so that I'm really ready to roll. Okay. And now I'll take care of those threads.
Do you have a particular favorite size of jump ring?
Oh boy, do I. Let's start some controversy. I usually use a 6mm heavy jump ring. So I want a jump ring that's at least 18 gauge wire or bigger. And 6mm inside diameter is kind of one of my favorites, and it's one I use a lot. I don't think I need quite as heavy a one to attach this clasp, though. so I can pick a slightly smaller gauge. So I'm gonna put these on in a kind of a particular fashion. I want to put the longer outer one on first, and then the inner one. And if I had a smaller one, I would add that at the same time. Okay. So I'm going to pick up my chain and loop it on the hook of the bead tip. And I like to take my bead tip, round nose pliers, roll over that loop of that bead tip, heading for the open inner jaws of that clamshell. All right? And what it does is it actually gives me a little bit more room to work, and then I'll close up my clamshell. And clamshells are best done with a couple of firm but gentle squeezes. We don't want to collapse it. We really want to make it look like a little round bead.
I used, what were those? The crimping tool.
Oh yeah, you can do that too.
Just because I have a strong grip sometimes, and I don't like that dent.
Right.
From the dome.
It's easy to do. So fold that guy over, and sometimes this takes a couple of kind of convincing little moves. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. We'll do the other side.
I'm feeling the vibes.
Are you feeling the vibes? Beach Boys songs? I don't know. Something. A little bit more thread here I'm going to remove. There we go. And grab that little end, roll it over, kind of heading for that open mouth of the clamshell. And gently, gently close it up. You know, firm with conviction. What does that Kate say?
With the courage of your convictions.
Verge of your convictions, that's right. See, even if you're not here, Kate, I know you're watching in your car on the way to Tacoma. Roll it over. Roll it over. Oh, a little bit more. Courage of my convictions. Sniffle. Silly girl. Okay. So there's 2 strands of loveliness.
Great.
Right? And now we're going to make it into a necklace. And this is going to need a clasp because this is not long enough to go over your head. Okay? One thing we can do is grab our measuring tape and measuring from the smallest end up, we were going to do something like an 18-inch necklace or so. We'd probably be up around here somewhere. So in that case, I'm probably using about a foot of chain. I would venture to say about 6 inches more, right? So the same thing I want to do here is go ahead and cut off the lentils at about 18 inches, so about 9, 18 on both sides, yeah?
Okay.
And I'm just going to come in here and take off that lentil. So I'm going to cut near the hole of the lentil, and then I can pull that link out. There we go. Do you ever have an idea of the right side? Is there a right or a wrong side to put the clasp on? Do you know? Do you think?
I always put I'm a right-handed person, so I always like having the clasp that I have to adjust in my right side.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
And I get annoyed. And then if it's on the other side, if it's like from like a store or something, I was gifted something and it's on the left side, I'll take off the jump ring and put on the other side.
Good girl, me too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put a jump ring on this side for that clasp to bite into, and I'm going to use a smaller jump ring to attach the clasp with. Right? So this is about a 4 and a 6 millimeter.
Got it.
That gives you a little bit more of a feel on that other side to allow you to grab with. And in this case, I'm going to use 2 pairs of chain nose pliers. If you have a bent chain nose, this is a great place to use it too. But I'm just going to twist open the jump ring. I'm going to attach the chain on one side, the clasp on the other. Does this not fit on a heavy jump ring? No, it might not. Might have to go to, oh no, there we go. When you close up a jump ring, you want to twist it back to closed, right? Try not to do this to a poor little jump ring. It never turns out well. All right. So in this case, if we were going to do a shorter necklace, we'd want about a foot of chain. We'd need some jump rings and a lobster claw clasp, or clasp of your choice. You could actually pick another one. I tend to like to balance the size of my clasp and the size of my materials. So if my stringy material is fairly small, I'm going to have a smaller clasp, right? Do you want to model this one?
I can.
Could you?
Should I take off my other?
I would
should
love
we
to
move
have
back and
Yeah.
Yep.
what's the size of the necklace you're wearing, Emily?
This is a 2-foot. I'll let you take off your beautiful one you have on today.
I got these from Bead last year when I first met you.
Stunning.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, that looks great on that gray.
Oh, it's cool. It is lovely.
Yeah,
Very
that looks
good.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
No,
did
no,
this
no,
part.
thank you. It's a 50-50, come on.
Yeah, well,
It's a
you did
50-50. Well, yeah, yeah. So the necklace I have on has 2 feet of chain, plus my 8 inches of chain, 8 inches of beads, so that's going to be about 32, 24, 8, 32, something like that. And of course now I'm tangled in myself.
Uh-oh. Need some help.
Yeah, I'll let you untangle me, Grace. I bet it got onto the
Okay,
clasp.
Exactly.
Yep, I've got a little hook clasp back there. So let's do a quick measurement on this one. And the shortest strand in there, here we go. Pip, 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 pip. 16. So about 30. Yeah, right in there. Right? But I really liked how that looked. That's a layering piece.
Is this the same length?
Yes.
Let me see how that
Yeah. Oh, cool. Look at that. So now you can have the options. Right? So it could go anywhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah. And the different chains
Mm-hmm.
to give it texture. I like that a lot.
Ooh. So I think we're about ready to wrap it up, guys. How was that? Did you have a great time? Oh, please, Brandon, come around here wearing your necklace. Come around, Brandon.
I won't be able to see you.
That's okay. You know it's okay.
So
Brandon has your beautiful birthday necklace on. Look how pretty it is.
I got some of
Earrings.
the Czech beads were actually from the
Turkey?
trip to Turkey that I went to.
yeah.
So.
So I got Turkish bead and Drea.
Yeah, Drea sent us some.
Beautiful.
Um,
Dyed lucite.
Was it lucite? Was that what I said
Acrylic.
earlier? I think it was lucite, and she hand dyed them.
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
It is beautiful.
They are
I am.
beautiful.
I am.
Well, you're
Lucky
a purple
lady.
girl.
Blown away.
You're a purple girl. So
I'm really happy with this. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Of course. We're on happy days, they say.
So it was a really good day today. I had a ball.
Yeah, I did too. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for hanging in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So make sure to check in on our Facebook tab on our website. You can also find these videos later on our YouTube channel, beadshop.com. And their projects and the recipes are going to be posted for you. Janice will be working away, I'm sure, over the weekend with her episode notes, which I gotta say, every time I see the episode notes, JP, I am very impressed with how much effort you put into them and how well they come out. And it's lovely to look back on the day, actually, and say, oh my God, I remember that. That was such a good point.
A recap is really
That
it's helpful.
recap feeling is really good.
Yeah.
So we hope to see you guys again. Send us your photos. Send us your questions. Feel free to ask us lots of detailed things, and we have some specials for you.
Yes,
right?
we do.
It's 12:15, so for about the next hour or so, if you put in your shipping notes, M's Gems, Jen has pulled a really pretty little pile of mixed material, some rose quartz, some aventurine, and some rock crystal in there. They would actually make a beautiful little strand here. We could mix all those together, and you'd probably get one of these shorter strands. Yeah, but it really blends in there beautifully. Maybe add some gray pearls to that. It would look awesome.
Some size variety. And the mat with the...
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And comes, of course, in a little organza bag. Totally. So we really appreciate you guys placing your orders in that first hour after Facebook is done. And you hold that one. Also, everything in the store is on sale. This is special notice for our Facebook subscribers, Facebook watchers, and our newsletter openers. So if you got your newsletter this morning and you opened it up, you saw this notice as well. So Emily 15 to your coupon list will knock 15% off. It's a good time to buy tools. It's a good time to get it all.
When does it expire?
It expires tonight at midnight.
I see. So only orders today.
Only orders today. Okay. So it's sort of a short-term thing. But again, 15% off is really nice. You know, it takes off a little bit of the boy.
Right.
You know?
If you use that,
and you get this.
The hour,
you get some free stuff. Yeah. So I am so happy to see that, and I'm so thankful and happy to be part of the Bead Shop gang here. So I think we did it. Have I forgotten anything?
No.
Did I forget anything?
I'm just going to say there'll probably be photos of this, so if you want to see the necklace close up, we'll have to go to those episode notes.
Yes, you will have to go to the episode notes. Right. So if you're watching another time, remember to go past about 15 minutes or so into it before we get to the teaching part. And we'll see you guys next week. And I'm sure you'll see Kate on Friday for a sneaky free Tip Friday action.
I'm sure.
Yep, but we've got some good stuff planned for you next week. So we'll see you next time, next Wednesday. Be there, be square.
Thanks, Emily.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Of course. Bye, guys.
Bye.